Your soulmate did something in secret that you were never meant to discover. They went to a psychic. They sat across from a woman known for reading connections that ordinary people could not explain. They brought no long story. No dramatic explanation. Just one photograph. Your photograph. They placed it on the table and asked a single question. Is this person still part of my future? The psychic looked at the picture. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then her expression changed. She leaned closer. Her fingers moved toward the photograph. And suddenly stopped. She looked at your soulmate. Where did you get this? The question sounded strange. Your soulmate explained. The psychic said nothing. She picked up the picture again. This time, she stared at it much longer. Then something happened that nobody expected. She closed her eyes. Her breathing became slower. Her face lost its color. And after nearly a minute, she opened her eyes and whispered, I don't think I should continue. Your soulmate thought she was joking. She wasn't. They asked what she had seen. The psychic pushed the photograph across the table. I need you to take this with you. That made no sense. They had paid her to reveal the future. Instead, she was trying to end the session. Your soulmate refused to leave. They wanted an explanation. The psychic finally looked directly into their eyes. What happened between you two? Your soulmate hesitated. The psychic continued. Because this isn't behaving like an ordinary relationship. That sentence changed the atmosphere. She wasn't talking about attraction. She wasn't talking about compatibility. She wasn't even talking about love. She was talking about something she apparently could not explain. Then she asked something even stranger. Have you ever tried to forget this person? Your soulmate didn't answer immediately. That silence was enough. The psychic nodded. I thought so. Your soulmate asked how she knew. She pointed toward the photograph. Because the connection doesn't look broken. It looks interrupted. Those two words stayed in the room. Interrupted. Not finished. Not erased. Interrupted. And before your soulmate could ask another question, the psychic suddenly looked toward the empty corner of the room. Her eyes widened. What? Your soulmate turned around. Nothing was there. The psychic whispered, Michael. Your soulmate looked confused. Who is Michael? She didn't respond. Her attention remained fixed on that empty space. Then she quietly said, Archangel Michael. The room became completely silent. She lowered her voice. I wasn't asking for him. A few seconds passed. Then she said something that made your soulmate's heart race. He came anyway. Now imagine sitting there. You came expecting a prediction. Instead, the person reading your future appears frightened by something you cannot see. Your soulmate asked what Archangel Michael wanted. The psychic shook her head. I don't know. Then why did you mention him? I didn't choose the name. That answer created a completely different mystery. The psychic placed both hands flat against the table. Then she looked at your photograph one more time. There is a reason you two were separated. Your soulmate immediately asked, what reason? The psychic remained silent. She appeared to be searching for words. Finally, she said, you think the distance destroyed something. She paused. But what if the distance protected it? That possibility changed the entire reading. Your soulmate had spent so much time wondering why things became complicated. Why conversations stopped. Why timing failed. Why certain opportunities disappeared. Why every attempt to move closer seemed to meet another obstacle. They had assumed the universe was against them. The psychic offered another possibility. Maybe the door wasn't locked to keep you out, She looked at the photograph. Maybe it was locked until you were ready to enter. Your soulmate didn't know what to believe. Then the psychic asked a question that seemed completely unrelated. Have you recently dreamed about this person? Your soulmate froze. There had been a dream. A strange one. A dream they hadn't told anyone about. In it, you were standing somewhere unfamiliar. There was a bright light behind you. You weren't speaking. You simply looked at them. And just before they woke up, you said something. A sentence they could still remember. The psychic asked, "What did you hear?" Your soulmate told her. The psychic immediately stood up. She walked away from the table. She refused to continue. Your soulmate followed her with their eyes. What was wrong with that message? The psychic didn't turn around. It wasn't a message. What was it? A warning. That word landed differently. Your soulmate asked what they were being warned about. The psychic finally turned. Not you. She pointed toward your photograph. The warning was about what happens when you find each other again. Silence. Your soulmate stared at her. Again? The psychic nodded. You haven't had the final meeting yet. That sentence opened another door. Because your soulmate believed the story had already happened. The relationship. The separation. The memories. The pain. The silence. Everything seemed like something from the past. But the psychic was saying the past wasn't the conclusion. It was preparation. Your soulmate asked when the meeting would happen. The psychic didn't give a date. Instead, she said, you will recognize the moment because neither of you will be expecting it. Then she stopped. Her eyes returned to the photograph. Something had changed. She looked confused. Almost disturbed. What? Your soulmate asked. The psychic whispered, there are two paths here. She moved her finger across the table. One leads toward reunion. Then she moved it in another direction. The other leads toward permanent separation. Your soulmate asked which path they were on. The psychic didn't answer. She looked toward the corner again. And this time, she whispered, Michael knows. Your soulmate asked, then ask him. The psychic closed her eyes. For several seconds, she didn't move. Then her lips began to tremble. She opened her eyes. No, why? Because I was given an answer. Your soulmate leaned forward. What answer? The psychic looked directly at them. And for the first time that night, there was no uncertainty in her voice. You are not supposed to know yet. Your soulmate became frustrated. They demanded to know why. The psychic picked up the photograph. She turned it face down. Because knowing too early could change what you're supposed to do. Your soulmate asked what they were supposed to do. The psychic's expression softened. Nothing. That answer sounded almost insulting. After everything they had been through, the instruction was simply to do nothing. Don't chase. Don't force communication. Don't manipulate the timing. Don't try to uncover every hidden detail. Just wait. But then she added something that made the entire room feel different. Something is already moving toward you. Your soulmate asked what? She shook her head. I can't tell you. Why? Because I don't want to be responsible for changing it. Then she placed the photograph back on the table. This time, she didn't look frightened. She looked almost sad. And she said, there is something about this person you don't know. Your soulmate asked, what? The psychic stared at the picture. Your connection didn't begin when you met. A chill moved through the room. Your soulmate asked what that meant. The psychic refused to explain. Instead, she said, you will understand later. Then she reached for the photograph again. But before she could touch it, the candle beside her suddenly went out. No wind. No open window. Nothing obvious. Just darkness. The psychic froze. She whispered, "That is my answer." Your soulmate asked what answer. She looked toward the photograph. Then toward the empty corner. Then back at your soulmate. "I cannot read your future anymore." "Why?" Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Because someone has already intervened." Your soulmate asked who. The psychic didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "The one protecting the connection." And just before the session ended, she gave your soulmate one final instruction. "When this person comes back into your life, don't ask why they returned." She paused. "Ask what changed before they did." Your soulmate left with more questions than answers. But they didn't know the most important part. The psychic had kept one detail hidden. Something she saw after your soulmate walked out of the room. Something connected to your future. Something she had written down before destroying the page. 3 words. She had written, "They will reunite." Then she had crossed it out. Underneath, she wrote something else. Something she was too afraid to say aloud. "Not yet." And beneath those words, she wrote a date. A date your soulmate doesn't know. A date you don't know. A date that may explain why the connection disappeared when it did. And why the silence may not last forever. But there is one thing the psychic saw that night which she never told your soulmate. And that secret is where everything changes. Because the person your soulmate thought was running away from you may have been running towards something they were never prepared to face. And in the next part, the hidden reason behind that separation begins to surface. Not through a message. Not through a dream. But through something your soulmate discovers completely by accident. And when they realize what it means, they will finally understand why the psychic refused to finish the reading. The date was not random. The psychic had written it down for one reason. Something was supposed to happen before that day arrived. But she had destroyed the paper because she was afraid of what would happen if your soulmate saw it. 3 days passed. Then 7. Then 14. Your soulmate tried to forget the strange reading. They returned to their normal routine. Work. Phone calls. People. Noise. Distractions. Yet one sentence kept returning to their mind. Your connection didn't begin when you met. They couldn't explain why those words bothered them so much. Eventually, they convinced themselves the psychic had simply been trying to sound mysterious. Until the first sign appeared. It came from an old device they hadn't touched in years. They were cleaning out a drawer when they found an old phone. The battery was dead. The screen was scratched. There was no reason to turn it on. But something made them plug it in. A few minutes later, the screen came alive. There were hundreds of forgotten photographs. Most meant nothing. Old places. Old conversations. Old memories. Then they saw one picture that made their hands stop. You. But there was something impossible about it. The photograph had been taken before the two of you officially met. Your soulmate knew the date. They knew where they had been. They remembered that day. And they knew you weren't supposed to be there. They zoomed in. You were standing in the background. Not clearly. Not looking at the camera. But unmistakably present. Your soulmate stared at the screen. Their heart began beating faster. They checked the date again. It was years before the relationship began. They searched through other photographs from the same period. Nothing. Then they found another. You were there again. Different location. Different day. Same impossible presence. Your soulmate whispered, "How?" They kept searching. A third photograph appeared. Then a fourth. Then another. You weren't the center of any picture. You weren't even supposed to be part of those moments. Yet somehow, you kept appearing at the edges. Like two lives had been moving toward the same point long before either person understood why. Your soulmate remembered the psychic's words. This connection didn't begin when you met. Suddenly, those words didn't sound symbolic anymore. They sounded literal. Your soulmate grabbed their phone. They almost called you. Then stopped. Something inside them said, "Wait." That single hesitation may have been the most important decision they made. Because that night, something happened that they couldn't explain. They dreamed of a bright doorway. You were standing on the other side. But you weren't alone. Someone stood behind you. A figure surrounded by intense light. Your soulmate couldn't see the face clearly. Yet they knew the presence. When the figure spoke, the voice was calm. "You are searching for the beginning." Your soulmate answered, "Yes." The figure said, "You are searching in the wrong place." The dream changed. Suddenly, your soulmate saw moments from their own life. The decisions they regretted. The opportunities they missed. The relationships that ended. The moments when they almost contacted you but didn't. Everything appeared connected. Not like random events. Like pieces of a pattern. Then the voice returned. "You believe you lost this person." A pause. "You did not." Your soulmate asked, "Then where are they?" The answer came immediately. "Where they need to be." The dream ended. Your soulmate woke up before sunrise. Their heart was pounding. For several minutes, they couldn't move. Then they noticed something on the bedside table. A small object they hadn't seen before. It was an old photograph. Your photograph. The same one from the psychic's reading. Your soulmate had left it somewhere else. Yet somehow, it was now beside them. They picked it up. There was writing on the back. Not their handwriting. Not yours. 4 words. "Wait for the right moment." They couldn't breathe for a second. Then they remembered something else. The psychic had mentioned Archangel Michael. Michael is often associated with protection, courage, and spiritual defense. And suddenly, your soulmate understood why the psychic had refused to continue. Maybe she wasn't afraid of what she would discover. Maybe she was afraid of interfering with something already unfolding. Your soulmate spent the entire morning trying to find an explanation. They searched old messages. Old photographs. Old dates. Anything that could explain how you had appeared in those earlier pictures. Then they discovered something even stranger. The first photograph had been taken at a place your soulmate had visited because of a last-minute decision. They weren't originally supposed to go there. Someone had invited them at the last moment. The second photograph came from another unexpected change. The third came from a day when they had almost stayed home. Every photograph existed because of a tiny decision. One different choice. And you would never have appeared in any of them. Your soulmate suddenly realized something. Perhaps your paths had been crossing without either of you noticing. Years before love. Years before conversations. Years before either person understood the meaning of the connection. Then another memory surfaced. The first day you actually met. Your soulmate remembered the feeling. It hadn't felt like meeting a stranger. It had felt strangely familiar. At the time, they couldn't explain it. Now they could. Or at least they thought they could. But there was still one question. Why had everything fallen apart? Why would something apparently protected by heaven be allowed to become painful? That question followed them into the evening. And that's when the second unexpected sign arrived. Their phone received a message. No name. No explanation. Just one sentence. Don't force what is already moving toward you. Your soulmate stared at it. They didn't reply. A minute later, the message disappeared. Not deleted. Disappeared. The conversation vanished completely. They checked again. Nothing. They took a screenshot. The screenshot was black. That was the moment fear became real. They returned to the psychic. But she wouldn't answer the phone. They called again. Nothing. They sent a message. No response. Finally, late that night, the psychic called back. Her voice sounded different. She didn't say hello. She said, "You saw the photographs." Your soulmate froze. "How did you know?" "I was expecting you." "What is happening?" The psychic remained silent for several seconds. Then she said, "You found evidence of something I wasn't supposed to reveal." Your soulmate demanded an explanation. The psychic answered, "Those pictures weren't showing you the future." A pause. "They were showing you the pattern." "What pattern?" "The reason you kept crossing paths." Your soulmate sat down. The psychic continued. There are connections that begin with attraction. There are connections that begin with friendship. And there are connections that seem to begin long before either person becomes conscious of them. Your soulmate asked, "Is this one of those?" The psychic didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, "You need to understand something about your separation." Your soulmate waited. The separation wasn't caused by a lack of feeling. That sentence hit harder than expected. The psychic continued. Someone made a decision. Who? Your soulmate. Silence. Your soulmate didn't understand. The psychic explained that there had been a moment when the connection became too intense. A moment when your soulmate realized they were losing control of their emotions. Instead of moving closer, they stepped back. They convinced themselves distance would make everything easier. But there was something they never told you. Something they had never admitted. They were afraid. Not of you. Of what they felt when they were around you. Because you reached a part of them they had spent years protecting. And instead of facing it, they ran. But the psychic said that wasn't the entire reason. There was another factor. Someone had influenced their decision. Someone who believed the connection would ruin their life. Your soulmate suddenly remembered a conversation from the past. Someone had warned them. Stay away. At the time, it sounded like ordinary advice. Now it felt different. The psychic said, that person didn't know what they were interfering with. Your soulmate asked, who was it? The psychic refused to give a name. Instead, she said, your soulmate believed that person was protecting them. Then came the revelation. They were actually protecting themselves. Your soulmate went silent. For years, they had blamed circumstances. Bad timing. Distance. Miscommunication. Pride. But perhaps another person's fear had quietly influenced everything. And that wasn't even the worst part. The psychic's voice became quieter. There is something else. What? The person who interfered is no longer able to control what happens next. Your soulmate asked why. The psychic answered, because the choice is no longer theirs. A long silence followed. Then the psychic said something that changed the entire meaning of the reading. The next movement comes from your soulmate. Your soulmate asked, what does that mean? It means they will have to choose. Choose what? Fear, she paused. Or truth. That night, your soulmate finally understood why the psychic had refused to finish. The future wasn't fixed. The connection wasn't guaranteed. There was a choice waiting. And choices can change everything. Before ending the call, the psychic gave one final warning. Do not chase them. Your soulmate asked why. Because if you force the door open, you'll never know whether they would have opened it themselves. Then she hung up. Your soulmate remained alone in the room. The old photograph was still in their hand. They looked at your face. For the first time, they didn't feel desperate to contact you. They felt something else. Certainty. Not certainty that you would return. Not certainty that everything would magically work out. Certainty that something unfinished existed between you. And somewhere beyond what either of you could see. The next decision was already approaching. But there was one final detail the psychic had never told your soulmate. She had seen the date again. The same date from the destroyed paper. And this time, she knew exactly what it represented. It wasn't the day you would reunite. It wasn't the day your soulmate would call. It wasn't even the day you would receive a message. It was the day something hidden would be exposed. A truth about the past. A truth that would make your soulmate realize why you had been kept apart. And when that truth finally surfaced, someone would have to answer for it. Because the separation had never been as simple as your soulmate believed. And the person who knows the full truth has been silent for far longer than either of you realize. The truth had been hidden for years. Not because nobody knew it. Because the person who knew it had a reason to remain silent. And your soulmate was about to discover who that person was. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. No warning. No dramatic sign. No mysterious dream. Just a phone call. Your soulmate almost ignored it. The number wasn't saved. But something made them answer. A woman's voice came through. She sounded nervous. She asked, "Are you the person who was looking for the photographs?" Your soulmate immediately became alert. What photographs? The woman hesitated. The ones with that person in the background. Silence. Your soulmate didn't speak. The woman continued. I know what they mean. That was enough. Your soulmate asked who she was. She refused to give her name. Instead, she said, I knew about this connection before you did. Your soulmate's heart started racing. How? I was there. Where? At the beginning. The call ended. Your soulmate stared at the phone. Then it rang again. Same number. This time, the woman said something even stranger. Don't tell them I contacted you. Your soulmate asked, who? The woman whispered, the person who kept you apart. Then she hung up. For several minutes, your soulmate sat completely still. One thought kept circling through their mind. Someone had known. Someone had watched everything happen. And someone had deliberately kept quiet. They tried calling the number back. It was unavailable. So they returned to the old photographs. This time, they didn't look at you. They looked at everything around you. The buildings. The signs. The people. The dates. The locations. Then they noticed something they had completely missed. In one photograph, there was a person standing several feet behind you. The face was partially hidden. But the clothing was familiar. Your soulmate recognized it. They had seen that person before. Not recently. Years ago. During the period when your relationship began falling apart. Their stomach tightened. They opened another photograph. The same figure appeared again. Different location. Different year. Same person. Now the impossible pattern had a face. Your soulmate grabbed a notebook and began writing down every date. Every location. Every strange coincidence. Every moment when you almost met. Every time something unexpectedly changed. The list became longer. Much longer. Then they noticed something terrifying. Every major separation had happened shortly after this person appeared somewhere in the story. A cancelled meeting. A misunderstood message. A sudden argument. A strange rumor. A decision that made no sense at the time. One by one, the pieces began fitting together. Your soulmate whispered, they knew. But knowing wasn't the same as proving it. So they started searching. Old messages. Archived emails. Forgotten conversations. Anything. And then they found something. A message from years earlier. It had been sent to your soulmate by someone they trusted. The message said, you need to let this person go. At the time, your soulmate had accepted the advice. Now they read it differently. There was something unusual about the wording. It wasn't concerned. It wasn't loving. It sounded certain. Almost as if the sender already knew what would happen if your soulmate stayed. Your soulmate checked the date. The message had been sent one day before your relationship suddenly changed. One day. That wasn't coincidence anymore. They kept scrolling. Another message appeared. This one had been deleted. Only the notification remained. Trust me. You don't know what you're dealing with. Your soulmate's hands became cold. They remembered what happened afterward. The distance. The confusion. The silence. The breakup. Everything. But there was still one question. Why would someone do this? What did they gain? The answer came from the anonymous caller. She called again that evening. This time, your soulmate didn't ask her name. They asked, why were we separated? The woman breathed deeply. Because someone believed they were saving you. Saving me from what? From a truth you weren't ready to hear. What truth? The woman went silent. Then she said, you weren't supposed to meet this person at that time. Your soulmate's voice became sharper. Then why did we? That is what frightened everyone. Everyone? The word stood out. Your soulmate asked who everyone meant. The woman answered, people who believed they understood what was supposed to happen. Your soulmate didn't know what to say. The woman continued. They expected you to take one path. But meeting this person changed everything. Who expected that? I can't tell you. Why? Because some people still believe they can stop what is coming. Then the call ended. Your soulmate sat there in silence. They had been searching for a simple explanation. Instead, the mystery had become larger. This wasn't just about two people falling in love. It wasn't simply about bad timing. Something had happened before the relationship even began. Something that changed the direction of both lives. And now your soulmate was beginning to understand why the psychic had mentioned protection. Perhaps the separation had been painful. Perhaps it had looked unfair. But perhaps it had prevented something from happening before both of you were ready. That night, your soulmate returned to the psychic's office. The door was locked. The lights were off. There was a handwritten note attached to the entrance. Your soulmate recognized the handwriting. It said, "Do not come looking for me." Underneath it was another sentence. "But if you already know about the photographs, then it's too late." Your soulmate stared at the note. There was an address written beneath it. No explanation. Just an address. They went. The location was an old building outside the city. The place looked abandoned. Yet one light was glowing upstairs. Your soulmate walked inside. At the top of the stairs, the psychic was waiting. She looked exhausted. She didn't ask why they had come. She already knew. "You found the pattern." Your soulmate nodded. "Tell me the truth." The psychic looked away. I warned you. You warned me not to interfere. Yes. But you never told me what I was interfering with. The psychic finally looked directly at them. You were interfering with a choice. What choice? Yours. That answer didn't make sense. The psychic explained. There was always a possibility that you would find your way back to this person. But there was another possibility. You would move on completely. Your soulmate asked, and which one was supposed to happen? The psychic smiled sadly. That was never mine to decide. Then she said something that changed the entire conversation. Neither was it yours. Your soulmate frowned. Then whose decision was it? The psychic looked toward the window. God gives people choices. Angels can protect. Circumstances can redirect. People can interfere. But nobody can force two souls to choose each other. That was the first time the psychic sounded completely certain. Then she added, and that is why your story is dangerous. Your soulmate asked, dangerous? Yes. Because if you return to this person for the wrong reason, you may repeat the same pain. That stopped them. The psychic continued. You cannot return because you're lonely. You cannot return because you're afraid of losing them. You cannot return because you want proof that they still care. Then why? The psychic answered, because you've changed enough to love differently. The words landed quietly. There was no dramatic music. No supernatural spectacle. Just a truth that your soulmate had been avoiding. Maybe the connection hadn't failed because the feelings were false. Maybe it failed because the people carrying those feelings weren't ready. Your soulmate lowered their head. Then they asked, what does this have to do with the date? The psychic's expression changed. You remembered. Yes. She walked toward a cabinet. From inside, she removed a small envelope. She had sealed it months earlier. Your soulmate stared at it. What is that? The answer I refuse to give you. Why now? Because the date is close. The envelope was placed on the table. Your soulmate reached for it. The psychic stopped them. Before you open this, promise me something. What? If the answer hurts, don't run back to the past. Your soulmate agreed. The psychic released the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Your soulmate unfolded it. There was only one sentence. Before you met, your paths had already crossed 7 times. Their eyes widened. 7. Not 2. Not 3. 7. The psychic explained that she had traced every photograph. Every location. Every accidental encounter. Every decision that placed you within the same physical space. The connection had existed long before either of you recognized it. But there was more. The 7th crossing was different. That was the moment everything changed. Your soulmate asked, what happened during the 7th? The psychic didn't answer. Instead, she asked, do you remember the day you almost didn't meet? Of course they remembered. It had seemed insignificant. A schedule changed. A plan cancelled. A last-minute invitation. Then, somehow, you were there. That was the 7th crossing. The psychic said, that was the moment your lives finally aligned. Your soulmate stared at the paper. Then why did we separate? The psychic looked down. Because someone saw what was happening. Who? She finally gave the name. The person who had influenced your soulmate. The person who had warned them to stay away. The person who had appeared in the background of those old photographs. Your soulmate knew the name. And suddenly, memories they had buried came rushing back. But the psychic wasn't finished. That person believed they were protecting your soulmate. From me? No, she shook her head. From themselves. Your soulmate didn't understand. The psychic explained that your soulmate had begun changing. They had become more open, more vulnerable, more willing to confront old wounds. The person who interfered believed that change was dangerous. They wanted your soulmate to return to the person they used to be. So they planted doubt. They encouraged distance. They turned small misunderstandings into major conflicts. And eventually, your soulmate believed the separation was their own decision. But it wasn't completely. Someone had been pushing the scales. The realization was painful. Yet there was another truth. The psychic leaned forward. That person is about to confess. Your soulmate stared at her. Confess what? Everything. Why now? Because they know they cannot stop what happens next. A silence filled the room. Then the psychic said, "The date isn't the day you reunite." Your soulmate waited. It is the day the person who interfered finally tells the truth. Suddenly, the entire story made sense. The photographs. The warning. The psychic's refusal. The mysterious message. The date. Everything was pointing toward one confrontation. But then the psychic said something that your soulmate wasn't prepared to hear. When they confess, you will discover they weren't acting alone. Your soulmate's face changed. Who else was involved? The psychic shook her head. I don't know. You don't know? I was shown the existence of another person. Not their face. Not their name. Only their shadow. Then she closed her eyes. Her voice became almost a whisper. And that person has already contacted your soulmate. Your soulmate froze. Who? The psychic opened her eyes. I think you know. And suddenly, your soulmate remembered the anonymous message. The disappearing text. The voice on the phone. The warning. Someone had already entered the story. Someone who knew about the photographs. Someone who knew about the separation. Someone who knew what was coming. But there was one detail nobody had noticed. The anonymous caller had never said your name. She didn't need to. Because she already knew exactly who your soulmate was. And that meant she had been watching the story from the beginning. Your soulmate left the building carrying the envelope. They had finally received part of the truth. But outside, another message arrived. This one didn't disappear. It contained only 6 words. I know what they did to you. Your soulmate stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. You were never supposed to find out. A third followed. Meet me before the date. And beneath it was a location. The same place where you and your soulmate had first crossed paths. The place where everything began. The place neither of you had visited since the separation. Your soulmate looked at the message again. Then something unexpected happened. A second notification appeared. Not from the stranger. Not from the psychic. From you. And the message contained only one sentence. I think we need to talk. Your soulmate couldn't move. After all the signs. All the warnings. All the years of silence. You had reached out. But what your soulmate didn't know was that you hadn't sent that message because you suddenly missed them. You had sent it because you had discovered something too. Something hidden in your own past. Something connected to the same photographs. And once both of you finally compared what you had found, the real reason behind your separation would become impossible to hide. Because the secret wasn't only about who kept you apart. It was about why they were so afraid of what would happen if you found each other again. Because the moment your soulmate saw your words on the screen, everything they had been trying to understand suddenly became real. You had reached out. After all the silence. After all the distance. After every unanswered question. You had finally said, I think we need to talk. Your soulmate stared at those words for a long time. Their first instinct was to reply immediately. They didn't. Something felt different. This wasn't the kind of message sent because someone was lonely at midnight. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't asking for another chance. It sounded like someone who had discovered something. Something serious. Your soulmate finally typed, "Where?" Your response came almost instantly. "The place where we first met." That sentence changed the atmosphere completely. Because neither of you had returned there since everything ended. Yet now, both of you were being pulled toward the same location. Your soulmate grabbed the envelope from the psychic. They placed it inside their jacket. Then they left. The journey felt strangely familiar. Every street seemed to awaken an old memory. Every turn brought back something they hadn't thought about in years. And when they finally arrived, you were already there. Standing exactly where the two of you had first spoken. For a few seconds, neither person moved. There was no dramatic embrace. No immediate confession. Just two people looking at each other after a long silence. Then you said, "I found something." Your soulmate answered, "So did I." You both almost laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because after everything, the coincidence was impossible to ignore. You took out your phone. Your soulmate opened the envelope. Then you compared what you had discovered. Your evidence came from an old family box. Inside it was a photograph. The same location. The same period. And something written on the back. A date. Your soulmate looked at it. Then looked at the psychic's paper. The dates matched. That was the moment both of you understood. The photographs weren't random. Your paths had been crossing before either person knew the other existed. But there was one detail that neither of you had expected. Your family had kept records of one particular event. An event that happened years before your first meeting. Your soulmate asked, "What is this?" You explained that you had recently found an old letter. It had belonged to someone close to your family. The letter mentioned a strange encounter. Two people had crossed paths during an important moment. One was connected to your life. The other was connected to your soulmate. Neither knew each other. Yet both had spoken about the same future event. A meeting between two people who had not met yet. Your soulmate's face changed. Who wrote this? You gave them the name. They recognized it immediately. The person who had influenced their decision to leave you. The same person. The one who had been appearing in those old photographs. The one who had warned them to stay away. The one who had never explained why. Your soulmate stepped back. So they knew. You nodded. They knew before we did. Then came the question that neither of you wanted to ask. Why? You opened the letter. There was a sentence underlined several times. It said that bringing two specific people together would force an old family secret into the open. Your soulmate looked confused. What secret? You shook your head. I don't know. Then you noticed something else. The letter contained a name. Not yours. Not your soulmate's. A third person. The same person connected to the anonymous calls. The same person who knew about the photographs. The same person who had apparently been watching everything. Your soulmate immediately called the number. This time, someone answered. No greeting. No introduction. Just a quiet voice. You finally found it. Your soulmate asked, "Who are you?" The voice answered, "You already know." The call went silent. Then the person said, "I was told to keep you apart." Your soulmate's expression hardened. By whom? A pause. Then the answer came. By someone who believed your connection would destroy both of you. Your soulmate looked at you. You were listening. The voice continued. They were wrong. For the first time, the person sounded emotional. They thought they were protecting you. But fear made them cruel. Your soulmate demanded the full truth. The person finally gave it. The interference had never been about jealousy. It had never been about another relationship. It had never been because you weren't good enough. It came from an old belief. A belief passed from one generation to another. Someone had become convinced that if you and your soulmate reunited at the wrong time, both families would be forced to confront something they had buried. Something involving a decision made years ago. A decision that affected both of your lives. Your soulmate asked, "What decision?" The voice went quiet. Then came the answer. Your families once chose separate futures for you. Not marriage. Not some supernatural contract. Something more human. Your families had made choices based on fear, reputation, expectations, and control. They had unknowingly created circumstances that pushed your lives in different directions. The person who interfered later inherited that fear. They believed separation was the safest solution. So they manipulated circumstances. They encouraged distance. They planted doubt. They turned small problems into reasons to walk away. They thought they were preventing disaster. Instead, they created the very pain they feared. Your soulmate closed their eyes. All those years of confusion suddenly had a shape. But you still had one question. Why did the psychic see Archangel Michael? The person on the phone went silent. Then they said, because the psychic wasn't supposed to reveal your future. You waited. She was supposed to recognize the warning. What warning? That neither of you should return to the past version of yourselves. That answer was unexpected. The protection wasn't about forcing a reunion. It was about preventing another cycle. The connection could only move forward if both of you had changed. The psychic wasn't protecting a relationship. She was protecting a choice. A choice that belonged to you. And that was why Archangel Michael appeared in the story. Not as someone deciding your future. Not as someone forcing your soulmate back. But as a symbol of protection and courage. The message was simple. Do not return because you're afraid to lose each other. Return only if you are strong enough to choose each other freely. Your soulmate looked at you. For the first time, there was no fear in their expression. They asked, "Why did you message me today?" You answered honestly. Because I found the letter. Then you added something that your soulmate wasn't expecting. I realized I had been blaming myself for years. Your soulmate looked down. So had I. You both stood there quietly. No accusations. No pretending. No dramatic promises. Just honesty. And sometimes honesty is the moment a story truly changes. Your soulmate opened the psychic's envelope again. The paper was still there. 7 crossings. 7 moments. 7 chances where your paths nearly aligned. Then they noticed something beneath the final line. A tiny mark. A symbol. They showed it to you. You recognized it immediately. You had seen the same symbol on the back of your family photograph. Neither of you knew what it meant. So you searched the old letter again. At the bottom was another sentence. This time, there was no ambiguity. When the two finally discover the symbol together, the secret is no longer protected by silence. Your soulmate whispered, "So this is it." You nodded. The hidden truth wasn't about whether you were destined to be together. It wasn't about whether a psychic could predict your future. It wasn't about some guaranteed reunion. The real secret was much more powerful. Someone had spent years making choices for you. Someone had convinced you that the separation was inevitable. Someone had allowed fear to speak louder than truth. And now that control was gone. The future belonged to the two people who had been kept from choosing it. Your soulmate looked at you. Then said, "I don't know what happens next." You answered, "Neither do I." And strangely, that was the healthiest thing either of you had said. Because neither person was trying to control the ending anymore. There was no demand. No promise. No desperate attempt to recreate the past. Just one decision. To stop running from the truth. Your soulmate reached into their pocket. They pulled out the photograph. Then they looked at you. "Can I ask you one thing?" "Yes." "Did you ever stop loving me?" You didn't answer immediately. You looked at the photograph. Then at them. And said, "I stopped waiting for the old version of you." Your soulmate's eyes filled with emotion. You continued, "But I never stopped wondering who you would become." That was the moment the entire story changed. Because the reunion wasn't about going backward. It was about meeting again as different people. And somewhere far away, the psychic was sitting alone in her room. She had been waiting for a phone call. It finally came. She answered. A familiar voice asked, "Did they find the truth?" The psychic smiled. "Yes." "Did they reunite?" She paused. "No," the voice sounded surprised. "Then what happened?" The psychic looked toward the window. "They chose." Silence. Then the voice asked, "Are you sure that's enough?" The psychic answered, "It has to be." She looked at the old photograph on her desk. The same photograph that had started everything. Then she whispered, "Because love was never supposed to be the answer." The voice asked, "Then what was?" The psychic smiled. Free will. That was the final thing Archangel Michael had been protecting. Not a relationship. Not a prediction. Not a guaranteed ending. Your ability to choose without fear. And perhaps that is the part nobody told you. Sometimes the person who leaves isn't necessarily the person who stopped caring. Sometimes distance exposes what closeness was hiding. Sometimes a connection disappears because both people need to become strong enough to recognize it without destroying themselves. And sometimes the greatest spiritual protection isn't bringing someone back. It's making sure that if they return with truth. Not manipulation. Not fear. Not desperation. Truth. Your soulmate didn't leave the meeting with a promise. They left with something far more important. A clean choice. No psychic could make it for them. No family member could control it. No past mistake could decide it. And no fear could own it anymore. Before they walked away, your soulmate turned around. They asked, "So what happens now?" You smiled. "Now we stop trying to predict it." That answer stayed with them. Because for the first time, neither of you needed a prophecy. You already had something better. A choice. And if you're listening to this right now, maybe that is the message you needed too. Don't chase what keeps running. Don't force what requires manipulation. Don't confuse obsession with destiny. And don't assume every separation means the story is finished. Some endings are endings. Some are lessons. Some are protection. And some are simply space for two people to become capable of choosing each other without fear. If this story reached a place inside you that you cannot explain, leave one simple word in the comments: ready. Not because a comment can magically control your future. But because sometimes writing a word is a way of admitting something to yourself. That you're ready to stop living inside old fears. Ready to release what no longer belongs to you. Ready to let truth replace confusion. And if someone you once loved is truly meant to walk beside you again, you won't need to destroy yourself chasing them. What belongs in your life will meet you with clarity. Not constant uncertainty. Not endless guessing. Not emotional punishment. Clarity. So remember this final message. The psychic refused to finish the reading because she believed the future was already written. But she eventually discovered something even more important. The future wasn't waiting for her prediction. It was waiting for your choice. And that may be why your soulmate had to lose you for a while. Not to teach you how to chase them. Not to make you suffer. But to give both of you enough distance to become people who could finally choose without fear. Maybe the greatest revelation was never whether your soulmate would return. Maybe it was this: they were never supposed to return as the person who left. And neither were you. The old chapter can stay closed. Whatever comes next has to be written by two people who finally know the truth. And this time, nobody else gets to hold the pen. If this video touched something inside you, don't just leave it here. Take a moment and comment, "I am ready," if you're ready to release the past and step into what comes next. And if you believe this message found you at the right time, like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next message. Your story may still be unfolding, and sometimes the next revelation is the one you never expected.